Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve. Today we're going to talk about Heartstopper Season 2. Season 1 was a massive hit, so I'm going to assume that if you're here, you're already familiar with the show. Normally, I would consider doing a refresher, a bit like what I did with my review of The Summer I Turned Pretty, Season 2, where Season 1 got its own section before I shared my thoughts on Season 2. But I think everyone here knows Netflix's Heartstopper since it's far more known globally with significantly higher ratings, or at least that's how it seems. These streaming platforms love to hide their analytics, and now the workers of the industry are on strike. And I love that. I hope that they make these corporations bend the knee.
Your heartbeat is fast.
Sorry.
Try to focus.
Okay.
I wasn't actually sure if I was going to be able to review this show because of the strike, but Variety published an article that clarified things. I'm a film critic. Can I review movies? Absolutely. Critics are not on strike and are not obligated to stop reviewing movies or TV shows. I'm an entertainment journalist. Can I cover movies and TV? Yes. Entertainment journalists, whether they belong to a union or not, are not on strike. Even those broadcast journalists who are represented by SAG-AFTRA are not affected, as the strike relates only to the TV/theatrical contract. I did not receive any payment from Netflix to do this review. I had emailed them before the strike to ask for press screeners for Heartstopper, and I received these press screeners before the strike was announced. I wrote out an entire review before the strike was announced, and am only deciding to move forward with still doing this review because of what it stated in the Variety article, and the fact that SAG-AFTRA shared that article on their official Twitter account. If at any point the terms and conditions of the strike are updated in such a way that SAG would like for anyone who wants to be eligible for SAG membership in the future to not review films or series, I will completely stop. I'm also going to share some resources in the pinned comment for how you can donate to help the workers that are on strike at the moment. Now, let's get on to Heartstopper. I think the most efficient way to share my feedback of Season 2 is to go through things character by character, since there are so many of them on this series. But before we do that, I did want to share one or two disclaimers about the material of this new season. One of the things that's really great about Heartstopper is that even when it wants to get into more serious topics and the challenges that young people, or especially young queer people, or to be fair, queer people of any age might have to deal with, they handle these topics with a lot of sensitivity. You can really feel that they're not trying to traumatize the fans of the show and of the characters that exist in this world. Still, though, there were one or two things that stood out a bit more as being potentially challenging for some people to watch. As all of you will know, main character Nick came to realize in Season 1 that he is bi. And there was this really lovely scene where he comes out to his mother, who is portrayed by Olivia Colman, and she is so warm and loving and supportive in her reaction to him sharing this. However, this season there are one or two instances of Nick having to deal with biphobia and of people trying to invalidate the fact that he's bi, people who think that if a guy comes out as bi that it's not a real thing or that he's actually gay. I don't think they overdo it, but it still was one of the more unpleasant parts of Season 2 for me personally as a viewer, where someone would say something biphobic and I would kind of scrunch up my face and go, I don't like that. Another thing that I would say is to proceed with caution going into watching Season 2. If you have any sensitivity about EDs, you don't see anything too graphic. There's no binging or purging shown on screen, but you do see struggles with food and specifically to do with not eating enough. There is also a mention of self-harm. You don't see anything graphic. This is not 13 Reasons Why, but you hear someone say that they used to self-harm without any flashback scenes that actually show you. They just have the character say it verbally. And I would rather give anyone who watches my review a heads up about these things just so they can have those things in mind and mentally prepare themselves if they need to do so in order to be able to watch a show where one or more of these topics comes up. Just look after yourself, your health, and your overall well-being. Overall, though, I really enjoyed season 2, and I do recommend it, especially if you were already a fan of season 1, to tune in and see the story continue. Now let's get into some feedback about the characters. We'll start with the supporting characters. Most of the characters on this show are teenagers, but as we all know, there are also some adults. I would say my favorite adult characters in season 2 are Nick's mother, Tao's mother, and the teachers that we see the most, which are Mr. Ajayi, Mr. Farouk, and Coach Singh. She's the rugby coach. They all have their moments at different points in season 2 for you to connect with them and appreciate them, even if you're first and foremost there to follow along and be invested in any number of the teenage lead characters. There are also some more parents this season whom we haven't seen before, and some of them are not great. But it wouldn't be a compelling story to watch if every character was all happy and sunshine and never caused any problems and got along with everyone. I would say that overall everyone contributes something important for the overall dramatic narrative and for what they reveal about the characters they're associated with. And if you think I'm being too cryptic, I'll just let you all know, in case you didn't already know this. Sometimes when you get press screeners, you also receive a list of DNRs, which are do not reveals. I actually really like when I have a do not reveal list because it gives me clear parameters about what I'm not allowed to say. So yes, that does mean that sometimes I have to be even more vague than I otherwise might have been.
Don't look at me. I don't know a thing.
A lot of the characters we see in season 2 are ones we've already seen in season 1, but there were also some new ones. There's a student called Harry who is gay, and he's a really sweet guy. I like him a lot, and I hope that if this actor isn't busy with a different job, that they will come back in season 3 and hopefully become more integrated into the main friendship group. There's also Nick's older brother, David, and I don't like him. You can watch the show when it comes out, and you will quickly find out why I don't like him. Or if you look up a basic description of him as he exists in the source material, you'll figure it out. And yeah, it's team throw tomatoes at David over here in my small corner of the internet because he's the worst. Don't harass the actor when the show comes out, though, because ultimately he's just an actor playing a part. But David, the fictional character...
Boo, tomato, 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 I'm throwing tomatoes.
If we look back at season 1, the main villains we had, and maybe that's a reductive descriptive word to use, maybe foes would be more accurate, or everyone's least favorite characters, were Harry and Ben. And guess what? I'm still not a fan of either one of them. But I did find it interesting that the show took a different approach to them in season 2. It's not necessarily about wiping their slates clean or excusing anything they did, but it's more so broadening the scope somewhat of how we see them so that we can understand more of why they are the way they are. And when you take into account that both of the characters are quite young, if you imagine what it's like for people who act like them to exist in real life, I think the show is showing how there might be a path for them to be less horrible someday. But the main thing that I love about the approach to these characters in season 2 is that it never forgets the importance of boundaries. If someone treats you horribly, even if they have personal reasons for acting the way that they have, or perhaps they develop the self-awareness or maturity to learn to be better than that behavior, it does not mean that you're obligated to forget what they did and let them be in your life. I personally have a strong visceral reaction to the idea of being forced to let people stay in your life when they've harmed you severely, especially when you're talking about children. I know for Heartstopper, these characters I'm talking about that are doing the harm are also children, and the people being harmed are also children. All of these kids are still in school, but I've heard that type of rhetoric when I was younger of being forced to let harmful people stay in your life. And suffice it to say, I wholeheartedly reject that. So I love that the show Heartstopper, even though it's a show largely there to entertain its audience and make them happy, it can also provide these small nuggets of wisdom to impressionable young viewers, or even older viewers who might not have figured out that life lesson quite yet. The final supporting characters I want to mention before we get into the main friendship group of the show are Imogen and Tori. These two, I would say, are the underrated MVPs of this season, although I stand by the general notion that these two characters are more so in the realm of the supporting category than the main category. Both of them have some pretty big moments that had me cheering them on loudly in season 2. Not to be overly cliche with this description, but they were giving me vibes of I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, and it was a fun time to watch. Imogen's big moment is midway through the season, and Tori's big moment was closer to the end of the season. I know some viewers were perturbed about Imogen in season 1, particularly when she was pursuing Nick, but they're not doing that storyline anymore in season 2, so everyone can put the pitchforks down, or at least don't use them to chase after Imogen, because she's a nice girl, and she's doing her best. In episode 1, they very quickly established that the whole Imogen-Nick situation is not going to be romantic whatsoever. Not that it ever was, and not that anyone thought that it would go in that direction. But episode 1, she outright tells him, I promise I don't fancy you anymore. So you're immediately won over, and she's just really sweet in season 2. I don't know what else to tell you. You just have to watch and see for yourself. But Tori, when you see what Tori's big moment is for this season, I'm saying she might just be my MVP of the entirety of season 2. I know that what I'm referring to is something that just happens in one episode, but she does what needs to be done. Out of all these people, if I'm in a crisis, I'm going to be calling Tori to come help me handle it. But now let's get into the core friendship group, and we will go in a fairly predictable order. We will start with Isaac, and then we'll do Darcy and Tara, Elle and Tao, and close this section with Charlie and Nick, because they're Charlie and Nick, and I don't feel right about having to make any characters go after them. Isaac was very low-key in season 1. He didn't have a whole lot of story going on. He was mostly there to smile, be generally positive, supportive, and read his books. In season 2, Isaac actually gets to have some character exploration and development. If you've looked up information about the source material, you might have an idea already of where Isaac's story is going. But if you have not looked up the specifics and you prefer a more vague preview of his material, one of the things that Heartstopper has going for it that I think is very positive is that it's very broad in its scope of the lengthy acronym LGBTQIA+. It's not a story where you have one queer relationship or one queer character, and then that's expected to be something that every LGBTQIA+ viewer is going to feel perfectly mirrors their life experiences. Nick is bi, Charlie is gay, Elle is trans, Darcy and Tara are in a lesbian relationship. Isaac has a storyline in season 2 that is part of the LGBTQIA+ acronym, but a part of it that we have not seen explored yet with any of the other characters. I think it's a nice development for him, but I also think there's still a lot more that can be done with his story. If you compare his story to season 1, there's definitely a lot more material this time around, but I would say that Isaac also still feels like a less prominent character than the rest of the friendship group. The way that season 2 ends sets him up well, where they could definitely expand his character and better integrate him into the friendship group that he is ultimately supposed to be a part of. I think that would be really fun to see because I find the character to be really endearing, he's well performed, and I would be interested in seeing what the show's writing team would do with him next. Now we have Darcy and Tara. For season 1, we got to see them get into a romantic relationship, come out to their friends and peers at school, school, and in general just be very cute together. This season there is a further development, exploration, and maturation of their feelings for one another, as well as more being shared about some other aspects of their personal lives outside of the relationship they have with one another. Tara also has her birthday this season, which is a big occasion for many reasons. After all, a birthday is cause for a celebration, and who knows what sort of fun can happen when a birthday party is underway. Elle and Tao had a bit of a will they won't they going on in season 1, and we do get more of that in season 2. Whether or not they get together fully or end up together, you'll just have to watch the season to find out. But beyond just their romantic entanglements with one another, Elle is in the process of trying to get into art school. We saw in season 1 that Tao and Elle had this mutual interest in art insofar as them having both taken art classes, but he was struggling with it while she had better skills. Now in season 2, we can see that this interest is more than just an elective at school or even a hobby, but something Elle has a genuine passion for. I always appreciate when Heartstopper can keep the scope of the story and the material for specific characters to be about more than just whether or not they have a romantic relationship with another character, particularly because it's a television series and there's more in the runtime than resolving a will they won't they question. It's important to make the most of the space to develop the characters beyond one storyline. If it's a feature film and you only have 2 hours, my expectations are not lowered, but they're different. Tao's arc starts off in season 2 with him realizing that his feelings for Elle are not merely platonic. We saw in season 1 that he was more oblivious about that, since a lot of his energy was going towards being worried about Charlie and disliking Nick and other popular students at their school. He didn't want anything bad to happen to Charlie as a result of him associating with a popular sports person like Nick and the horrible people that were around him most of the time, like Harry. What's actually really cool about season 2 is that we get to learn more about Tao so that you can have a better understanding of why it was that he acted so intensely in season 1 about Charlie and Nick's relationship. It wasn't something that I expected to be developed in the season 2 storyline. I don't know if that's material that was just directly lifted from the source material, but I found it to be really heartfelt and earnest and moving. Now let's get on to the main event, the main draw of the show, which is of course Charlie and Nick, both as individual characters and the romantic relationship that they have with each other. Let me just say right now that when I began watching my screeners for season 2, I was enjoying this cute montage we had in the opening of episode 1 of them being a happy couple finally together. But then I very quickly started getting stressed out because I remembered we were only in episode 1 and any story you watch is going to ebb and flow, have ups and downs, and I just started bracing myself with all this worry about whatever bad things could potentially be coming to hurt my babies. But I'm happy to report that Heartstopper sticks to what I've already mentioned previously, which is that it handles sensitive subject matter respectfully and carefully. I would say delicately is probably the right word. So you might be wondering, what are the boys up to this season? Well, as we all saw, we ended season 1 with Nick coming out to his mother, and that was probably one of my favorite scenes of that season, because if you show me Olivia Colman getting weepy, then there's a decent chance I might start doing it too. I can't help myself. Season 2 picks up almost immediately after that exchange. Nick tells Charlie that he just came out to his mother, and Charlie is of course overjoyed, partially because it's one more person with whom that relationship is no longer a secret to, and also because Nick's mother took it out so well. Charlie is already out, and he's been out for, well, I don't actually remember if they gave a precise timeline for that in season 1, but Nick, he's new to even realizing that he's bi, so in season 2 we get to explore more of that coming out dynamic insofar as, is he ready to come out? Will he come out? To whom will he come out, and under what circumstances? And what effect does Nick's coming out journey have on Charlie? There's never really any question between either one of them that they deeply care about one another and they want to be with each other. But as far as we're aware, this is the first real romantic relationship these boys have had, perhaps at all. I don't remember if Nick had any long-term girlfriends before he dated Charlie, so if they did mention that, you can definitely correct me if there's any throwaway bits of trivia I'm not remembering at this precise moment. One thing we learn about Nick this season is that his father is French. And that means we get to hear Kit Connor speaking French. And if I do say so myself, he's not bad at it. Does anyone happen to know if he already spoke French or if it was something he studied specifically to do a not horrible job on for this job? I haven't had time to do much digging into whether or not this is something that's already been discussed, since I've had to quickly watch my screeners for both this show and another show I have screeners for. Spoiler alert, it's Good Omens. And I have to make both of these reviews while I'm at San Diego Comic-Con. So yes, by the time you are watching this, it will be a week or so later, after the event has already finished, but I digress. I wasn't sure how the show was going to handle Charlie and Nick's relationship now that they're together, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you'll have a show that is better at doing the build-up of getting two people together than it is at keeping the story and relationship and characters interesting once they've gotten together. Happily, I can say that even though Charlie and Nick are now a couple, the story has not lost its momentum or appeal. You still have individual character arcs for both of them, issues that they're grappling within themselves as people. They also develop and explore what it means for both of them to be a romantic couple. If Nick's story puts more focus on him learning and navigating the dynamics of coming out as a newly realized member of the broader queer community, Charlie's journey is more so about navigating his mental health and self-worth. I think we saw in season 1 how poorly he's been treated, particularly from characters like Ben and Harry. And now in season 2, we get to peel back the layers of what the ramifications of receiving that type of treatment are. How does a young, vulnerable teenager handle the baggage and trauma of being mistreated in those ways? It's also an interesting and refreshing way to continue Charlie's story because he's someone who does have a support system. He's got parents and an awesome older sister, all of whom love him and accept him, but that isn't a magical fix-all either. He can still struggle with his mental health even if he does have loving people around him. The future of Heartstopper seems bright, as far as I can tell. Season 2, I felt, lived up to the hype and momentum established with Season 1. Although Season 2 has a lot of arcs that work as a contained story, there were also multiple things set up or left open in such a way that there's so much room to develop and explore them further in a Season 3 or even more seasons after that, depending on whether or not the powers that be decide to continue the story for more episodes. There is a sort of cliffhanger at the end of season 2 that I think will have the fans in an uproar if there is not some sort of answer or continuation to follow up on what we see at that moment. Charlie's mental health journey also feels like it's only just begun in season 2, so I would love to see how that carries on into a third season. Maybe he could start going to therapy to further destigmatize the topic of mental health and also invigorate and motivate young people to fight for greater access to mental health resources for all people and not just those with massive fortunes who can afford things like private mental health care. Many of the character arcs we see set up in season 2 for the characters in the main friendship group feel wide open. Season 2 doesn't feel like a finale. It feels like a further maturation and exploration of the characters we met in season 1, but there is no way the story is finished. Not if I have anything to say about it anyway, which I don't know how much of a say I really have apart from me just sharing some of my opinions on the internet. But let me know what your hopes are for either season 2 or potentially future seasons of Heartstopper. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all tomorrow, as in the day after this video goes live, for my review of Good Omens Season 2. Thank you all for watching. Bye.